Welcome, my name is Jason Matthews. Today we're going to talk about something incredibly important: safety, health, environment, risk, and quality within your company. This isn't just about compliance, it's about fostering a culture where everyone goes home safely at the end of the day. Our journey begins with compiling your SHERQ file. This is your central hub for all things safety. This is my safety files. They're quite thick and I use them quite often to update safety topics, and then also this is the Occupational Health and Safety Act and Regulations book. First, you'll need the right tools. You can source essential procedures and templates from the EBS online shop at www.e-bs.co.za. These resources are designed to guide you. Once downloaded, update these documents with your company's specific information, creating both electronic and hard copies for easy access. Crucially, you'll need to appoint a SHE representative. This role is vital for internal oversight and should ideally be rotated annually to share the responsibility and get fresh perspective. As you delve into the SHE documentation, you'll encounter various roles and responsibilities. Each document provides guidance on the necessary training to ensure competent individuals are performing critical tasks. For example, a first aid trainer must have proper first aid certification. You also need to appoint a Section 16.1 appointee and a Section 16.2 appointee who will assist the CEO in overall safety management. The employer nominated member to the Health and Safety Committee under Section 19.3 plays a crucial role by representing the employer's interests in occupational health and safety, serving on the appropriate Health and Safety Committee, bringing any health and safety deviations to supervisor's attention. The Safety, Health, and Environmental representative is equally vital, tasked with representing their employee electorate's interests in occupational health and safety, carrying out workplace health and safety inspections prior to committee meetings, serving on the appropriate Health and Safety Committee. While these documents might seem overwhelming initially, remember you don't need to use all of them from day one. As you review each procedure, you'll gradually understand which ones are applicable now and which ones may be relevant as your company grows, diversifies its services, or works with clients operating at different safety levels. For small businesses, maintaining a robust safety file and adhering to safety practices is non-negotiable, especially when working with corporate clients or energy-producing clients. Your safety performance directly impacts their safety scorecard. This is particularly crucial for service providers operating on client sites, as incidents involving your employees can negatively affect your client's safety rating. Corporate clients demand assurance that your staff are well trained, often requiring site-specific safety inductions for potential risks like gas leaks or explosions. You might feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of forms, procedures, and the OSHA book itself. However, by applying these procedures one by one and maintaining a consistent rhythm of inspections and updates, you'll gradually grasp the underlying theory and the profound importance of safety within your company. Many owners perform necessary safety tasks intuitively, like replacing damaged equipment to prevent injury. However, a formal safety management process means documenting these actions as evidence of a robust safety culture. This protects both you and your company. For instance, if an injury occurs, you'll have documented proof that you addressed hazards and communicated changes effectively to employees, perhaps through signed attendance registers. So in this video, I'm going to practically and in detail show you the different sections of a SHERQ file, and you'll understand that it's not too complicated. It just needs time and administrative effort.
Other names referred to as the SHERQ file are the SHE file, the Health and Safety file, the Contractor Safety file, Site Safety file, or the OSH Act compliant SHE file. These are the typical sections in a SHERQ file. Firstly, you have the incident management and reporting. The purpose is to capture, track, investigate, and manage all types of incidents, including accidents, near misses, injuries, illnesses, property damage, and environmental spills. Then we have the hazard identification and risk assessment. The purpose is to systematically identify potential hazards, assess their risks, and implement control measures. Then there's inspections and audits, which is to conduct systematic checks of workplace, equipment, and processes to identify non-compliance and potential hazards. Safety or observations or behavior-based safety is where we encourage and track positive safety behaviors and identify at-risk behaviors. Compliance management is to ensure the organization adheres to relevant safety laws, regulations, and standards. Then there's training management to track employee training, certifications, and competencies. And there's always going to be reporting and analytics through dashboards to visualize safety data, identify trends, and generate insights for decision making. Practical steps to get started. So what's your first step? Obtain the templates. Head to the EBS online shop, www.e-bs.co.za, to download the essential Word and Excel templates. You'll download them in a manageable portion as there are over 100 documents. Secondly, organize your file. Create a clear folder structure and copy these documents. Then rename them or add your company details to personalize them. You'll notice a common flow in these documents, and that is a procedure explaining what needs to be done, followed by practical documentation in the form of a regular or weekly inspection sheet. Thirdly, print these documents and organize them into 1 or 2 large lever arch files with dividers. Now you have your physical SHE or SHERQ file. Make this a living document. Your file isn't just for show, it needs to be a living document. Appoint a SHE rep. Find someone with capacity who can take on this role. You can share and delegate responsibilities. Conduct monthly safety meetings. Begin having regular safety meetings with your team. Start with a brief safety talk, then explain the implementation process, identifying next steps. For example, you could assign someone to build an asset register of all equipment that needs inspection. Encourage people to simply write down things, then have someone type it up for an editable soft copy. On a monthly basis, show your team the progress. Don't rush, take your time. The goal is to delegate tasks to everyone who has a role to play. Start updating inspection sheets and recording deviations. Delegate someone to fix issues, and if finances are needed, ensure you keep receipts as evidence of resolution. If something can't be fixed immediately, establish a contingency plan and ensure everyone knows it, or remove the equipment from the operations. Gradually, as you build this process, you'll want to start measuring your safety performance. Monthly measurements provide data that will help you improve. Remember, you don't have to do everything perfectly from day one. This process requires capacity, potentially 10 to 15% of your staff's productive time. But the indirect benefits of preventing injuries are invaluable. It's hard to quantify the impact of losing a finger, but the effort invested in safety prevention reduces losses. After about a year or a year and a half, once you feel your processes are maturing, consider having a safety auditor come in. They can help you identify areas for improvement. Safety isn't about perfection from the start. It's about continuous mastery. And you're not doing this alone. Include your staff so that they understand and take ownership of the process. Your role is to coordinate and constantly encourage your team to identify risks and work safely. The ultimate goal is to ensure all your team members go home safely to their families. So once you've downloaded your templates, you need to create your own SHE folder structure where information is shared and also updated. You have a general folder which has got the document revision control sheet, your index, your monthly inspections that you need to perform, the quality management for the company, and also the quality management for the services that you render. Incident management, you've got 8 folders there. For risk management, you have also 8 folders there, and this is the place where you save your risk baselines. SHE management, you've got 4 sections there: administration and control, legal appointments, employee competence and communication, and then plant, equipment and tools. In administration and controls, you've got 25 folders over here with procedures, inspections, legal appointments, proof of competency, organograms, and then under employee and competency and communication, you've got 9 topics over here, of which the biggest chunk is the safety talks. And then this is the place where a folder where you update your equipment, understand the procedures of inspections, and then have a checklist on a monthly or a daily basis. In the general folder, there's a document called the document revision control sheet, where every template within its folder structure is acknowledged. This is the place where you can update the initial date that the document was created. Is there an electronic version of it? Is there a hard copy? Has it been signed off? And if there's a new update to it, you can acknowledge the new date and what was the reason for the updates. This is all very important from an auditing perspective, so that the latest versions has been placed into your SHERQ management system. Then the next document you'll see is the index page, and this is something that you would print in and place it into your files. Legal appointments. Then the next document is a monthly activity tracking sheet, so you can highlight which checklist do you need to be inspecting on a monthly versus a quarterly, and so that your SHE representative can then manage this process. The next document is the quality management system. So as with the Q in the SHERQ file, it talks about quality, and you need to create a process that defines how you ensure quality in your services or in your goods. So the first step is to try and create a process flow, so that whenever there's a deviation, you are able to identify where the deviation is and then address it, or if you need to recall certain products or redo certain services, you are able as a company to identify where along the value chain did a defect occur. So this is just an example of a services environment and ensuring that your quotation process and the work that you do is properly done. However, you would need to customize it for your own company and the services or the goods that you render. The next document is the quality management system for your SHERQ management process. And this is showing how I make sure that my hard copies and my electronic copies are aligned, and that my electronic copies have a backup process so that if anything happens to the cloud where you could store your information, or to the device where you've stored all your information, you need to make sure that this information is available and you have some kind of a backup process. This is the incident management procedure with definitions, instructions, definitions of what's fatality, initiate investigations, communicate it once you've reported it, statistics of what is a lost working day case, an analysis and review. This is the process flow of the incident management. This is a guide, or like a bit of a training material that looks at definitions, investigation concepts, investigation steps, visiting the scene, conducting interviews, and then finally concluding on the results of the investigation and communicating and preparing a report. And this is an article about the 5 whys. And then this is an extra recording and investigating a report, and this is the near missed report form, which then helps you identify what was the reason for the incident, and then it gets signed off. This is the incident accident report form. It talks about the details of the injury. An environmental incident report form, if anything happens that impacts the environment, this needs to be completed. And then these are documents from the compensation department that needs to be completed if there's an investigation. The first one is the employer's report of an occupational disease that took place, information about the employee, and then the employer's report of an accident that took place, provide information and the details related to the accident. And then a first aid medical report in respect of an accident, that's also being updated here and sent to them. And also the final progress medical report in respect of an accident, so that you can conclude if the matter is officially closed. This is the resumption report that you send to the Department of Labor. Then you have an incident register for each year. Then you have an incident investigation form. This is the template that you'll use as you gather the information. Identify what is the incident exposure information, the incident evaluation, summary of the facts, and errors in how the task was performed, and then finally actions to prevent a reoccurrence and who's going to take responsibility, and you can acknowledge the investigating team that did the investigation. Then there is the incident closeout checklist, highlighting what are the things that needs to be done, especially with regards to communicating how to perform these tasks safely in the future. Here is an incident communication form, the description of the incident, lessons learned, and also the staff acknowledging what has happened. You've got now a incident statistics. This is information that's recorded throughout the year on our recordable cases within the company and also our service providers and combined. And graphs can be developed from those monthly statistics, as well as we've got here the near miss statistics that are recorded for the month, and then you can create a trend graph. The next section is the risk management policy, which needs to be signed by the directors, and you have the risk assessment procedure, who's responsible, definitions, baseline risk assessment, task-specific risk assessments, and continuous risk assessments. This is the risk matrix that you use to objectively measure the risk of a task and the consequences or the hazards that can be exposed to the employee. And you can see it's also been signed off. Here's a bit of some studies on it. This is an example of an office environment where you have the different tasks, the hazard types, what is the inherent risk rating, and if you put forth mitigation on the risks, this is now the residual, as in the risk now has reduced, and then who takes responsibility. So this you'd develop it as in a group and then formalize it and then sign it off, and keep reminding the team members to follow the preventative measures to prevent risks. Other baseline risk assessments that are available are for welding environment. Task-specific risk assessments have been developed for drilling machines, for gas welding and grinder use.
Section 2.4, there are task-specific risk assessments for portable ladders and welding hand tools. Then we have portable ladders, safe work procedures, showing how to use a ladder, how to use it safely and using the correct PPE. Then another safe work procedure is vehicles using trailers and what's required over there. Then we go on to the next section, 2.6, which is the planned task observation procedure. Then we have the planned task observation form, in which you complete yes or no's against certain questions when you're inspecting PPE, tools and equipment, hazardous chemical substances, safe working procedures. And then we have a daily task risk assessment with yes or no questions and space where you can add any risks or hazards being identified and what are the preventative actions.
In this section, you place your letter of good standing on an annually basis, the latest version. The next section is related to public liability insurance. Thereafter, you go into the insurance for the company that you have in place, in case there's any damages that you can keep there. Then there's the exception for working longer hours or just general hours for employees and what constitutes overtime. And then these are time cards for employees on a weekly basis, also referring to overtime. Then you have the service provider's service offering SHE plan checklist. So this is something that you engage with your client, highlighting certain things that are in place, and you can tick them off, especially to make sure everybody is on board and the necessary processes and governance are in place. And if there's any next steps that needs to be documented. Then, depending on the work that you do, you'd need to define a scope of work and highlight what is it that you provide and what's the safety risks for each one of them. And the next one is the SHE legal register. So for each service that you provide, you'd have to reference certain legislation or acts related to those services and highlighting these are the typical things that you are legally obligated to do. And comply to. And then This is an extra A, notification of construction work. Section 3.1.10, health and safety plan. So this explains the health and safety plan for the organization. Definitions, it's got the incident management, the risk management, the SHE management, administration and control. So everything that you find in this file is what's properly documented here, and what is the reason for each of the different sections. Going down to safety talks, training plan, and finally it gets signed off and staff acknowledgement. Then you have specifically for the company a safety, health and environmental policy, looking at safety and health, environment, commitment and competency and risk assessments, prevention and control, performance evaluation, stakeholder engagement and continual improvement. And you get it signed off. And then as a company, you would have specific objectives related to SHE and targets that you'd like to achieve. And you can then define them in the objectives and targets register, and then start to monitor it through your performance scorecards and templates. Are available for this as well, so that you can assess the deviations on a month and compare it to the previous financial year to see how you are improving, also the number of injuries. Then we go to the management of change procedure. So every time a change occurs, you need to properly follow a process to ensure that the change is implemented. It was consulted by the relevant parties and communicated to the employees. So explaining your company's management of change process and how it's going to be implemented. And this is then a management of change form where you assess, is the change permanent, temporary, or is it because of an emergent situation? And then you assess to highlight what is the risk of this change and the impact thereof. And then you get it signed off to ensure that in the future, if something ever happens, you can always communicate to the auditors that you had performed a well-managed change management process. Then going into the waste management plan. Every company produces waste, and you need to identify it and highlight how you are going to dispose of it in a safe manner. And then if there's any complaints received by the public, how do you then address those complaints? And then you create a waste inventory of what types of waste and how is it going to be disposed. Section 3.114, Environmental Management Plan. So in this section, you're describing how you're going to manage any impact to the environment. There's an environmental monitoring checklist. And then the next section is related to emergency action plan. So you need to train your staff on how to deal with different types of emergencies, such as gas leaks or a fire. And then this is the procedure and how you will perform this. And you need to test that the staff, the safety reps, can do this if it happens. Then you've got the emergency drill planning checklist and also the mock emergency report. So this is something that you would conclude after you perform that mock emergency to see where we can improve on. Did we discover certain things that we were not aware of during the inspections? The next section is the material safety data sheet. This is where you highlight and understand the different types of chemicals that you are using in the company and what are the risks and what do you do if you get exposure to it, and what is the first aid medical measures. And then you'd run this through your team so that they are all familiar with it. The next section is your safety meeting minutes. So on a monthly basis, as a team, you would go through a safety moment, review previous next steps, review the safety environmental file, if it's up to date, any issues, any next steps, and any decision registers that has been made. And you keep following up with that and delegate some of these activities to your staff. But this is very important. It also needs to be signed off by the relevant directors or section 16.1 or 2, so that there's accountability and there's a record of any kind of issues. And this is the way in which we are monitoring this. Okay, so, and even you can even use some photos and pictures that you can add there as evidence that certain activities took place. And then you have the SHE representative inspection logbook. And this is a checklist of all the things that the SHE representative will look at and perform an assessment and inspection. Section 3.119, the first aid procedure that you can teach to your team. It is quite intensive with some pictures and photos. However, it is advisable to get a few of your employees trained on first aid, but this is something that helps employees understand how to do first aid. Then you have a first aid dressing register. Every time an injury takes place, you would acknowledge that these are the items that was used. This is the personal protection equipment procedure and who is responsible to provide them the relevant personal protective equipment and what are the responsibilities of those using them. And this explains the different PPE and what is the purpose thereof of it. And then there is the personal protection hazard assessment that you will be performing for each of the items issued. This is the personal protective equipment issue register, what was issued and a date thereof. And this is like photos of the PPE. Then for those companies that work at heights, this is the fall protection plan and how the staff are trained and what equipment is required to prevent any falls, which can lead to injuries or even a fatality. Next is the area layout plan, section 3.122, highlighting the exit points, the bathrooms, and where there's a fire emergency, also any emergency numbers that needs to be placed on notice boards whenever there's an emergency. The medicals procedure, in some companies it is required for a medical examination to take place to make sure that you are fit to work in that environment, and then a certain service provider will be assigned and the employee will need to attend, and these are just some reports from those reports ensuring that the employee is ready for work. Section 3.124. This is the non-conformance reporting procedure, and we begin with an action plan highlighting where there was a deviation in your safety or SHERQ files and who now needs to close out these activities. This is the non-conformance procedure. What are the responsibilities? Who's going to perform it? You need the minimum section 16.1 and 16.2, a manager and a supervisor. And this is the NCR or non-conformance report performed by the investigator and highlighting the risk of the areas where you did not comply to the relevant governance. In some companies, an internal audit is performed by one of the employees from another department. And these are the checklists that they look at to see if there's compliance. And then there are client assessments that you can get from your client, and also external assessments which have their own specific templates. Then the next section is the contractor management procedure. So when you have subcontractors, it's important to establish those procedures on how we both manage safety. And this is the procedure, and thereafter there is an example of a template for the agreement between a contractor and what is required of them regarding safety.
In section 3.2.1, legal appointments, you have different types of appointment letters based on who you assign responsibilities. There's the assistant construction supervisor, assistant to the CEO, section 16.2, appointment construction manager, emergency coordinator, fall protection officer, firefighting equipment inspector, appointment of the first aider, hand tool inspector, the health and safety committee member, the housing facility and stack and store supervisor, other appointment letters include incident investigator, ladder inspector, portable electrical equipment inspector, vehicle and mobile plant operator, welding supervisor, chief representative, and risk assessor. And thereafter, if there's any certificates regarding competencies, you can place it in the file regarding different types of training. And wherever there's an organogram, that's section 3.23, that can be placed into the file. Section 3.31, employee list. So this is a list of all the employees in the organization. Then we go to the training needs analysis, where you can put people's names, and there's different trainings courses here, and to confirm when did they attend these training, and has anything expired. Then you have the procedure, the training plan, and the procedure thereof. What are the requirements with regards to training? And then they talk about refresher training, training institutes. Then the next section is the training records. Wherever there's training records, that can be stored, and then technical qualifications of the employees to make sure that you have all of that available if audited. Then section 3.36, internal training procedure. So if you want to train employees internally, then this is the process to follow, and also to evaluate that they have learned what they were taught. Then the next section is the competency declaration for certain tasks or competencies or trades that certain employees have completed. And then this is section 3.38, the induction training. So this is a large document that goes through training, safety induction training for all the employees, and it talks about how safety is measured. It discusses the near misses, how it leads to a fatality. Talks about signages, traffic safety, PPE, lighting and equipment, what is confined spaces, protection of the ears, how to use a earplug, how to carry heavy items. Then there's environmental awareness, wherever there's notes that you have from other training materials, you can include that because you want to share information. So I've got a lot of training that I've gone through, and these are some of my notes, even first aid training, and these are things that you can share with your employees wherever you can. You build up your training material.
Safety toolbox talks include emphysema awareness, four causes, falling objects, fire prevention, first aid, first steps to take after a car accident, focus on brake friction for safety, function and maintenance of glow plugs, especially in diesel vehicles, and hands-free is not risk-free. In the SHE management section 3.4, plant, equipment and tools. We start firstly with the equipment register, where you acknowledge all the items that needs to be inspected and where it's located, and you can update this on an annual basis. And then you've got the equipment maintenance procedure, which talks about identifying equipment that needs to be inspected and performing the inspection, and what is the training that's required thereof to perform those inspections. And then we start now focusing on different inspection checklists. So this one here is the vehicle services records. So if there is company vehicles, you acknowledge that it went for a service, and if there's any receipts of what was the work that was done, you keep that as evidence as well. Then you go to the personal protective equipment, where an inspection is done on a monthly basis on your boots, the jackets and pants, and to identify if everything is okay. And then firefighting equipment, where these fire extinguishers, a monthly inspection is done, and when it needs to be replaced or serviced, evidence of it being serviced needs to be saved as well. In section 3.4, further inspection sheets include one for the first aid box. If there's any hand tools, to identify it and perform the necessary inspections on it. Motor vehicle can be inspected on a monthly basis, and there's different things that you need to inspect physically on the vehicle and note them down. And where there's next steps, you highlight them and produce or save receipts and evidence of certain things that have been performed on the vehicles. That even includes the licensing of the vehicle. And then if you use a company vehicle on a daily basis, then there is a daily inspection lister. Portable ladders also can be inspected, and there's certain things that you look out for when you're inspecting the ladder. If there's any stacking of pallets or stock, there's a checklist here that's performed on a quarterly basis. And then finally we have the portable electrical equipment that's been inspected on a monthly basis. Where there's deviations, you record them, and once it's been completed, you save the receipts of things that you fixed on the electrical portable equipment.